The last thing my wife ever did, I watched on a security monitor the day before she did it. I'm going to explain that, and it's going to sound like a man making excuses. It isn't. I know how a shift log works. I know how a timestamp works. That's the whole reason it took me 6 years at Ashmore General to believe what the fourth floor cameras were doing. Security doesn't save anyone. I learned that in the first month. You sit in a room the size of a supply closet, and you watch other people's worst nights happen on a wall of small screens, and your only job is to write down the time it happened. You don't run in. You call the people who run in. You are, more than anything, a witness who is paid to be accurate, and an accurate witness learns one rule before he learns anything else. The tape shows you what already happened. The tape is the past. The tape is the one thing in the building that can't hurt you because it's already over. On the fourth floor, that rule was wrong. My name is Marcus. My badge said Vane because at Ashmore your last name went on the badge and your first name got left at the door, and after 6 years even my wife joked that the hospital had legally adopted me. Her name was Marin. She laughed with a little catch in it, like a hiccup she'd caught just in time, and at dinner she saved the last bite of everything, pie, toast, whatever it was, on the edge of her plate for me, without ever being asked. Remember that I said her name so easily just now. That gets harder later. The fourth floor was what the day staff called 4 West, and what everyone else just called comfort care. It was where the hospital sent people when the plan stopped being to fix them and started being to keep them comfortable while it ended. Quiet floor, soft lighting on a timer. The nurses up there spoke lower than anywhere else in the building, the way you talk in a room where someone's finally sleeping. 6 rooms, 1 nurse's station, 2 cameras, 1 on the corridor, 1 on the station. I'd watched those 2 feeds for years without ever really watching them, the way you stop hearing a clock. Then one night in October, I noticed the corridor camera had the wrong date. Not the wrong time, the wrong date. The little burned-in numbers in the corner read the 15th, and it was the 14th, 1 day ahead. Every other camera in the building, all 41 of them, read the 14th. Only the 2 on 4 ran a day fast. I did what you do. I filed a ticket, timestamp offset on the 4 West cameras, please recalibrate. The reply came back the next morning from a maintenance guy named Petri, and I still have it memorized because of how tired it sounded. Known issue. 4 West runs ahead. Don't log off the 4th floor time code, log off the master clock. Ignore what the corner says. So I ignored it for about a week. What broke the week was a coffee cup. I was watching the 4 West corridor feed, the one a day ahead, and a night nurse named Sunny set a paper cup on the counter, turned to answer a call light, and knocked it off with her elbow. Coffee everywhere. She spent 5 minutes on her knees with paper towels, and I remember smiling because it was the most that had happened on that floor in a month. The next night, the 14th by the master clock became the 15th, and I watched Sunny set a paper cup on the counter, turn to answer a call light, and knock it off with her elbow. Exact same elbow, exact same 5 minutes on her knees. I told myself she was just a woman with a habit and a small counter. People are more predictable than they think. I actually believed that for another few days. And I want you to notice how hard I was working to believe it, because that's the part that scares me now, not the cameras. Me. How much I needed the tape to be the past. Then I started testing it, and that's when I stopped sleeping. It was simple. I'd watch the 4 West feed at the start of my shift, tomorrow's 4th floor, and write down 3 small things. A visitor's coat color, which room's light came on first, whether the elevator on 4 opened empty at some point on its own, which old elevators do. Then the next night, I'd watch it happen, all 3, every time. I was never wrong because I wasn't guessing. I was reading. The cameras on the 4th floor didn't record yesterday. They recorded tomorrow, and nobody upstairs thought that was worth more than a maintenance ticket. I need to explain why I didn't just quit, and the reason is the reason for everything after. Because on the 9th night of testing, I wrote down my 3 small things. The second one was a woman in a green wool coat signing in at the 4 West station at 9:40. And something about the way she stood made my stomach drop before my brain caught up. Maren had a green wool coat. Maren stood exactly like that when she was tired, weight on one hip, one hand already reaching to sign something. I froze the frame. The corridor camera on 4 is aimed down the hall, so the station is far and a little high, and the woman was turned 3/4 away. I told myself green coats aren't rare. I told myself my wife had no reason on earth to be signing into a dying floor at 9:40 the following night. She was healthy. She'd been to the doctor in the spring. She ran. She was 38 and she could still beat me up a flight of stairs. I called her from the booth. It was 2 in the morning and she answered on the 4th ring with her voice full of sleep and said, "What's wrong?" And I said nothing. I just wanted to hear you. And she said, "You're scaring me, Marcus." And I said, "I love you. Go back to sleep." She did. I sat in that little room and watched tomorrow's green coat sign a form I couldn't read, and I decided I had lost it. That was easier than the alternative. The next night at 9:38, I left my post. You are not supposed to leave the booth. I left the booth. I took the service elevator to 4, and I stood at the end of that soft-lit corridor, and at 9:40, the elevator behind me opened, and a woman in a green wool coat stepped out and walked to the station and stood with her weight on one hip. It wasn't Maren. It was a stranger, 60 at least, there for her husband in room 3. I almost laughed with relief. I almost went home and slept for a year. Except the camera had shown me a woman who stood like my wife, and here was a woman who stood like my wife. And I understood, standing there, that the tape hadn't lied and it hadn't told the truth either. It had shown me the thing I would recognize. It had shown me the shape of what was coming and let me fill in the face myself. I'd filled it in with Maren because some part of me already knew where this was going, the way you know a phone is going to ring a half-second before it does. I started watching 4 every single night after that. Not testing anymore. Searching. I was looking ahead through tomorrows for a green coat that was actually hers, and I told myself if I saw it coming far enough out, I could change it. I could get her a different doctor. I could keep her out of this building. I could win for once, instead of writing down the time. Here is what I want you to understand about that floor because I didn't understand it for weeks. The camera only ever ran 1 day ahead, never 2. So the most warning I could ever get was 24 hours. I was trying to save someone with a ticket that only sold 1 day in advance. In November, the little catch in Maren's laugh, the one I'd loved for 11 years, stopped landing where it used to. It slid lower into her throat, and it stayed there, and it stopped being charming. I heard it, and I went cold in a way I couldn't explain to her, and when I begged her to see someone, she rolled her eyes and went, because she loved me, and the scan found a shadow that the spring hadn't had, and the shadow had a name, and the name had a flaw. I want to skip this part. I'm not going to. She was on 4 West by the 2nd week of January. Room 5. I requested off the 4th floor monitors, and my supervisor, a decent woman named Pell, said, "Marcus, you can't watch your wife on a hospital camera. That's not healthy. I'm pulling you off nights." And I said no. Keep me on. Please. Because by then I wasn't watching to save her. I'd failed at that. I was watching 4 because 4 ran a day ahead, and a day ahead was the only place left in the world where Maren was still going to be alive tomorrow. Do you see it? Every night I sat in that booth and watched the 4th floor 24 hours early, and every night on the screen, she was still there, still breathing tomorrow. One night I caught myself watching her dinner tray, waiting for her to move the last bite to the edge of the plate the way she always had, and I had to leave the room and stand in the stairwell until I could see straight. The tape gave me one more day with her, over and over, always one more, and I took it. I took every one. I stopped going home. Pell stopped fighting me. The last week, I started seeing something on the Tomorrow feed that I couldn't place. A security guard on the 4th floor, which was wrong. We didn't post a guard on 4. We monitored it, but there he was on Tomorrow's corridor camera, standing at the far end of the hall outside room 5, not moving. Same posture every night, same dark jacket. He never went in. Even when the call light over 5 came on, even when the nurses hurried past him, he just stood and watched the door. It took me 3 nights to freeze the frame and zoom, because I already knew, the way I'd known about the coat. The jacket was mine. The stance was mine, weight on both heels, hands folded. The way you stand when you've trained yourself not to run in, and where the face should have been, the man was turned toward the door, away from the camera, so I never saw it. I never once saw it. I told myself it was me. Of course it was me. Tomorrow I'd be on 4, standing outside her room, because tomorrow was the night the doctors had already circled on the chart, the night the plan finished. The tape was showing me myself the following night, keeping watch. That's what it does. It shows tomorrow. But here's the thing. I have never been able to walk myself back from, and it's the reason I'm telling a stranger instead of sleeping. The guard on the tape never moved. When her light came on, Tomorrow's light, the real one, the last one, he didn't go in. He didn't call it. He stood at the end of the hall with his hands folded, and he watched. The way security watches, the way a man watches who already knows how it ends because he watched it the night before. And the next night, when it was finally today, I stood at the end of that hall, and her light came on, and I felt my hands fold, and I felt myself not move. I stood exactly where the tape had put me, doing exactly what the tape had shown, and some far-off part of me was screaming to run into that room, and the rest of me, the part that had watched this happen 24 hours ago and knew how it went, the rest of me just wrote down the time. 9:52. The 4th floor cameras didn't show me the future, so I could change it. I've had a year to understand that, and it's the only thing I understand. They showed me tomorrow so that by the time tomorrow came, I'd already given up. Knowing how it ends is how they get you to stand still. The tape wasn't a warning. It was rehearsal. It taught me my part one night early, every night, until I performed it without a single wasted motion. The most efficient griever they ever had. I left Ashmore in the spring. I couldn't be in the building. Pell understood. The last thing she did before I turned in my badge was walk me out, and at the doors she said something meant to be kind, that the 4th floor cameras had finally been replaced. Brand new system. The timestamps were correct now. All 41 feeds reading the same day at last. I should have just left. I asked her anyway. I asked if the corridor camera on 4 looked normal now. She got quiet. Then she said it looked fine mostly. Just one thing the new text kept flagging and couldn't clear. On the 4 West corridor feed, every night around 10, there's a guard at the end of the hall. Dark jacket, hands folded. Standing outside room 5, watching the door. Room 5's been empty since January, she said. Nobody's assigned that post. And the timestamp on him, she said, that one's still wrong. That one still reads tomorrow. I didn't ask her to see it. I already know how he stands. I know he won't turn around, and I know that somewhere in that building there is a night, always one day out, always just past the edge of today, where I am still standing outside her door with my hands folded, having learned my part so well that I'll never, in any tomorrow they show me, go in.